So you went and got yourself a law degree. Congratulations, and welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu, and I created the show to teach lawyers how to work in their gift and live their passions. Together with my guest, we explore mindset, goal setting, productivity, and everything else you might need to find your happy. Today, I'm joined by Autumn Witt Boyd, a former litigator. Autumn now runs her own firm where she helps creative entrepreneurs with growing businesses solve their business and IP issues. We chat about her decision to leave her litigation practice to start her own firm as a corporate attorney and how she used her childhood passion for the arts as a guiding post to create a life and career she loves. Let's get to the show. Welcome, Autumn Witt Boyd. I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here, Akoma. Thank you for having me on.
It's so great to talk to you. And I think the best way to start would be if you could just share a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Okay, sure. So I've been an attorney for 12 years now. I went to Vanderbilt for law school in Nashville, Tennessee, and I grew up in Tennessee. So I had thought that I was going to go back to Nashville or stay in Nashville and work at a big law firm after law school. I ended up getting a judicial clerkship in Chattanooga, which is where I live now in Eastern Tennessee. Just a smaller city. It's not tiny, but it's much smaller than Nashville. And it was a 2-year clerkship. So at the time, with a federal district judge, trial judge. So at the time, I was actually dating a guy in Nashville. So I thought that I would just do the clerkship and then go back. That relationship kind of fell apart, which was definitely for the best for everyone involved. But that kind of forced me to evaluate. I was in Chattanooga. That was in my first year of the clerkship. So I had a whole nother year to go. So it forced me to kind of look around and think about what I wanted to do at that point. And I had started getting involved in Chattanooga. I joined a couple organizations and started making friends and was really liking Chattanooga. It's a really charming city. So at that point, I decided I had actually accepted a job at a big firm in Nashville. And so I had to call them and say, I'm not coming, which was awful. And I felt terrible about it. But it was just, I kind of knew in my heart that that was not where I was meant to be. So I interviewed.
Hold on. Can we just pause on that for 1 second? Because there's so few lawyers who would ever say that. I knew in my heart, so I didn't do it. People have 20 years careers based on something they know in their heart is wrong.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm a very risk-averse person, so I don't know what led me to do that, but I'm really glad I did follow my heart, I have to say. It has, and when you look back and you say, like, at every kind of decision point, if I had gone this way, would things have been different? Of course they would have been. And, you can never say if I had made that different decision, where would I be today? I don't know. But I'm really glad that I made that decision at that time.
Kind of consistent with your personality? Are you somebody, because I'm definitely more now somebody who follows my intuition on those things, but spend a long time doing the pro-con list, overthinking.
There was definitely a pro-con list. Let's be serious.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm still super type A. And I'm trying to remember, I don't think I had the job in Chattanooga before I told the Nashville firm because I must have not, because I wouldn't have felt good interviewing here, and kind of keeping that secret and, trusting all these lawyers here not to tell their friends in Nashville that they were interviewing me. That felt kind of skeezy. So, yeah, but I guess I just trusted that I would find a job. The judge I worked for, he definitely, ethically couldn't help me find a job, but I think he encouraged me and, was supportive and told me he thought that I probably could find a job here.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
It was a bit of a leap. And I think part of it at that time, honestly, was that relationship had fallen apart. We had dated 3.5 years and, I kind of saw I had planned my whole life around moving forward with him. So that shook my worldview up a lot when that relationship ended. Okay. So I think that probably emboldened me a little bit. Yep. Well, if it's not going to be that, then I might as well, do something that's really going to make me happy. And I was happy here.
That's great. No, I love that you're saying that because I think more people should be emboldened by their lives.
Yeah, and I think, it was certainly a risk, but a calculated risk. It's not like I was starting something totally different. I was still just going to be a lawyer working at a law firm, just a different one.
Even a calculated risk is quite a risk for a lawyer.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
Okay. So after that, you said no to that job.
I did. I finished my clerkship. I went to work for a firm here in Chattanooga that I really enjoyed. It was kind of a small regional firm. And I did litigation, which I had always wanted to do and I really liked. I love writing and advocacy and working for clients. I always had wanted to do more intellectual property work. And here in Chattanooga, we just there's not a huge client base that needs it. So I did a little bit at that firm, but there just wasn't a lot to go around. So I ended up getting hired as local counsel for a firm based in Colorado that was bringing a copyright case in front of the judge that I used to work for. And the time he had kind of a ban that you couldn't appear in front of him for, I think, a year or 2 years. So that time had ended, so I could appear in front of him again. So they hired me as local counsel.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And it was a copyright case. So it was really fun. I enjoyed working on it. And that firm at that time was kind of overloaded with work. So I ended up doing more of the substantive work on that case than normally a local counsel would. And when that case wrapped up, the lawyers from that Colorado firm had said to me, oh, we're looking to hire someone and we'd like for them to have, gone to a good law school and had a judicial clerkship and They listed all these qualifications that pretty much were like my resume.
Convenient.
And so they said, do you know where we could find someone like that? And I wasn't looking to leave my Chattanooga firm, but I said, I don't know if you're asking me if I want to interview, but I would be game for talking with you, and just I'm open to the idea. And so I guess that was another big risk that I took that I didn't think about at the time. But we ended up negotiating and they hired me on in a kind of telecommuting position. So I stayed in Chattanooga, but I was able to work for them doing copyright litigation all over the country. And so that was really a dream job at that time. Like it was exactly what I wanted to be doing. Really. No, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just wondering, were they offering a telecommuting job or did you ask for a telecommuting position?
Not really. Side note, my now husband, about 6 months before this opportunity came up, had just moved to Chattanooga from Colorado.
Okay.
So when they said, would you like to move to Colorado? Like, no, I don't want to move to Colorado. And my family is still here in Tennessee. So I kind of had put down roots and was hoping, I wasn't ready to start a family at that point, but I'd hoped that, eventually I would, and I wanted to be here long term. So yeah, no, I did it was a virtual firm already. One of the partners was in Pennsylvania. So it wasn't crazy that, I said, no, I don't want to be in Colorado. And they were pretty open to the idea of telecommuting. Yeah, so I took that leap and there was definitely a pro-con list for that one also. And I tried to leave my old firm on really good terms because honestly, I didn't know these guys very well and it could have, I crashed and burned. I didn't know. And they hired me on a trial basis. So, they could have decided they didn't like me either. So I tried to kind of leave the door open to my old firm if things didn't work out.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And I suggest that to anybody, if you're unhappy in your job, by all means, look for something else, but, never burn your bridges. And I still am very friendly with a lot of people from that firm. I see them all over town. Chattanooga is a small town. So I'm really glad that I was able to handle that gracefully. And they were very kind to me when I left too, that they were open to kind of leaving the door open as well. So that worked out as well as it could have.
So when you talk about your story, you seem to have so much clarity around the direction you wanted your career to go, even starting with, I always knew I wanted to do IP. Like, how did you, you weren't 10 and you were like, gosh, IP sounds fantastic.
No. So I think my background, I've always really loved music and I grew up singing. I actually went to college thinking that I was going to be an opera singer, which I feel like... I'm okay. I got to college and realized I am not nearly good enough. So I think I have a lot of clarity in retrospect. At the time, it very much has felt like muddling through, like we all feel. I did not have this straight arrow of a path that I thought was going to lead me to where I am today. Yeah, no. So I got to college and totally changed. I ended up being a journalism and English major because I figured out pretty quick that I was not going to be able to make a living with music. But I think that has always been in my background. I enjoy working with creative people because I think I just enjoy the arts so much. So I did, when I went to law school, I thought I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer.
Yep, that was my question.
Yeah. And then I got there and found out what that really means is working with contracts and negotiation. And especially in Nashville, where I was at the time, it was a lot of going to clubs and trying to meet new artists. And that just was not something that was super appealing to me at the time. What's funny is I kind of do that now. So I've come full circle. But at the time, negotiating contracts seemed really boring. And I thought litigation was much more sexy and glamorous and fun. So anyway, yeah. So no, I did not have this brilliant idea that I was was going to be an IP lawyer, but I always enjoyed that part. Like I enjoyed the copyright and trademark classes that I took in law school. So I always kind of wanted to do that work.
How did you go from journalism to law school?
Again, similar. Once I found out what being a journalist is really like, it's not exactly what I had thought it would be, and especially now, I'm actually really glad I got out when I did, because the whole journalism world has really changed with the advent of the internet. But when I was in journalism school, the career path, even for really, really good writers, and I would say I'm a pretty good writer. I'm not an incredible writer. The incredible writers were still having to go to like a really small town, make no money for the first couple years, pay their dues. Then you go to kind of a slightly larger town, work for a couple years, and you kind of gradually move around and move up. And that just honestly wasn't a career path that was really appealing to me. I wanted to be more settled, and I wanted to do something where, frankly, that I could make a better living from the get-go without having to, be in borderline poverty for the first couple years of my career. And so lawyering looked like, from the outside, a way that I could use my skills, that I could use my writing skills. And I love talking to people and interviewing and asking questions. Like all that stuff that I learned in journalism school, I feel it crosses over to law a lot. Yeah. And I love to read. Like it just kind of felt like it was a good match for the things that I'm interested in and the things that I'm good at. And somebody told me that when I was in college, like if you can figure out what you're good at and find a career, for things that are not super challenging. I mean, not that law is not challenging. There are certainly parts of it that are, but I was never good at math or science. So if I had chosen a career in math or science, it would have just been like an uphill slog every day. So that's how I decided to go to law school. And, when I got there, I really did like it and it was a great fit. So yeah, that is how the journalism to law school. What's funny is I would say almost half of my friends that I worked on the college newspaper with now are lawyers. I was not the only one that kind of chose a different path and ended up here.
Are they still lawyers today?
A lot of them are, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Some worked in journalism for a few years and then came out. So they may have a career shift on the horizon. Who knows?
I feel like with lawyers, there's always a career shift on the horizon these days.
That's good. That's another thing that I liked about the law degree was that it seemed like if you didn't love working in a law firm, there would be other things you could do with that background. It kind of gives you some options.
That's definitely true. I think there's a little bit of a lot, like sometimes people overplay that. You can do anything with a law degree, and I don't know that that's the best decision if you have no plan.
Right.
But I agree that people should also think more creatively about how to use their law degree.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to go back a little bit on something you said about money, because just to give a little context, you would have graduated back when interest rates and loans were pretty low still, or how did that kind of play into?
I was very lucky. I graduated from law school in 2004. So the interest rates were super low, and I was able to consolidate I did have some law school loans from Vanderbilt, but I was able to consolidate them at a really low rate. So I may be paying them off forever, but at least I'm paying them at a very low rate. And also the job market was pretty good. And I should, put all this in context. Mm-hmm. When I decided to turn down the job in Nashville and stay in Chattanooga, it was 2006. Like the job market was great. Oh, okay. There were lots of people hiring. I was able to get several offers to choose from. And a couple years later, I looked back and thought, and there were clerks whose offers were rescinded a few years later. I mean, it was kind of the exact opposite type of economy. So yeah, there's definitely been a healthy dose of luck in getting me just where I am today.
I think, I mean, to some degree, as a recession graduate, I definitely, because when you said that about turning down a job, having graduated, I was like, oh my gosh.
But did that give you cold sweat?
It did a little bit, because I graduated from a class, at Columbia where I don't want to say numbers because I'm sure somebody's going to call me out on it, but it was pretty alarming, the number of people who didn't have degrees. And for a long time, the, New York Times was calling us the lost class. And
yeah. I mean, from a very top of the top law school for people to be having trouble finding jobs, it was terrifying, I'm sure.
Yeah. But I think that a lot of people, at least in my kind of class, around my classes, still carry that fear and that sense of scarcity when the tables actually turned now.
Right.
Where we're in such high demand, but we don't know how to leverage that demand. because we kind of were raised as lawyers at this time of scarcity.
Right.
So that's something that I try to work with people on a lot, because they really don't ask for what they're worth, and they're scared to ask for like even really reasonable accommodations because they're scared they're going to get fired. I'm like, no one's going to fire you.
And even if they do, there will be other things you can do.
And like, I don't think they're going to go immediately to firing you just for asking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, so to wrap up kind of how I got to where I am today,
Yes.
I stayed at that copyright litigation firm for almost 7 years, telecommuting. In that time period, I got married. I had 2 babies. I have twin boys who are now almost 5. And the practice was all over the United States. We had clients all over and cases all over. So the travel really ramped up as I kind of got to be more senior in the firm and got more responsibility, which was great. I was traveling for depositions and hearings, and eventually we had a trial in Philadelphia that was spread out over 4 weeks between pretrial hearings and the trial and wrapping everything up. So the workload just became crazy, and what had been very much a dream job started to feel repetitive and like kind of a dead end, to be honest. And my family was having a really hard time with all the travel and with me being gone a lot. And it didn't bother me, I think, as much as it bothered them, honestly, because when you're in it and you're just cranking out the work and you're doing a good job and you're serving your clients, I think it's easy to kind of put blinders on to how it affects everyone around you. But my husband finally sat me down and basically had a, we can't keep living this way conversation. And I think I probably would have stayed in that job if he had not had that conversation with me and kind of opened my eyes to it. And I did a lot of soul searching and took a couple months to kind of think about, well, if not this, then what? And I got to that point where, like you said, I hoped they wouldn't fire me. And I had been asking for changes to be made for probably a year or two to the workload and to how we were doing things. And no changes were being made. And I was kind of at the point where it was clear that they weren't going to change, that I was going to have to make the change. And, being fired almost seemed like a gift because that would have made the decision for me. It was really hard. It was really hard to leave that job because there were so many good things about it. I mean, I worked at home in my yoga pants. I had total control over my own schedule, other than the litigation deadlines, which you don't have control over. But yeah, so I looked around and I thought about going in-house. We don't have a ton of companies here in Chattanooga that were a good fit for my skill set. I thought about going back to a firm, but the idea of having to go into an office and sit behind a desk from 9 to 5 when I had such flexibility and freedom and control. Yeah, I couldn't imagine going back to that. And my husband also has his own business. He's a consultant in the construction industry. But he honestly didn't have a lot of flexibility. So having one parent who had a lot of flexibility was really key for being able to have, the 2 kids and keep everybody alive and happy.
Alive is important.
Yeah. So I ended up deciding to go out on my own and start my own law firm, which was terrifying. Like the scariest thing I have ever done, for sure.
How many years out of law school were you at this point?
So almost 11, I think. Yeah, 10.
Okay.
Yes, because I went to my law school my 10-year law school reunion around this time. Yeah, so I had been practicing for 10 years, which I have to say gave me some confidence. It made it less scary because I did feel like, okay, I've been doing this a while. Yep. I've always worked with other people. I had never really gotten my own clients, so that was the scariest part. But I did feel like, okay, I have enough knowledge that if I can do this, and if I don't know how to do this, I know how to ask for help, and I know, where to go to educate myself. So that did kind of help embolden me. But yeah, I left that firm and I did not take any clients with me because I decided to stop doing litigation. So I totally reworked what kind of practice I was doing and had to build from the ground up. So, and I didn't know how that firm was going to take it when I told them that I was going to leave. I hoped that they would, keep me on as kind of a contract attorney to help finish up some of the cases that I was working on. But I didn't know that. I mean, I was afraid that they would be angry, and I was prepared the day that I told them that they would say, we never want to talk to you again. And thankfully they did not. They were so kind and generous.
I feel like that's how these stories always end. People are always terrified, but I feel like if you do good work, people want to help you.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And if you handle it with grace,
also true.
I did a lot of kind of planning and thinking about how I wanted to approach it. And, I wasn't trying to go behind their back and take any clients. I think as long as you're kind of above board with everything,
yep.
Usually there's a way to work it out so it ends up where everybody's happy. And so I did contract work for them for about a year after I left, which really helped smooth the transition. It helped me have, some income as I was building up my client base. I didn't go from a big salary to $0 right away.
So what does your day-to-day look like now with your own firm?
Yeah, so that was actually one of the hardest things when I left the other firm because I had been working from home. So I literally came back to the same office, was sitting at the same desk, in front of the same computer. So yeah, my day-to-day has not changed a ton, to be honest. I get up, I take my kids to school, I come back and I sit down and start working. But I do a lot more in-person client meetings now because in the past, with my last job, all of my clients were out of town. And so now it's probably still 70 or 80% of my clients are not in town, but I do have some in town. So that is nice. I do enjoy meeting with people in person. And I have gotten more plugged back into the community because I am looking to develop clients here. So rekindling relationships and going to bar events and other kind of networking things. So I've really enjoyed that. And I think the scariest part of going out on my own was, trying to develop clients. And what I found out was it's just like going to coffee with somebody or taking somebody to lunch. It's just chatting, and getting to know people. It's not nearly as scary as I thought it was.
Yeah, I think that people don't realize what it could be because when you come, at least for me, I started at a big law firm on Wall Street.
Yeah.
So I'm not taking Goldman to lunch.
Yeah, and client development for a solo is very different than client development for a giant firm where, you need probably $1 million of work to even make it worth their time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that you need to really, because a lot of people who I've talked to who are thinking about going out on their own at some point just get so overwhelmed by that idea of client development because that's all they've seen is these kind of big clients and these, big expensive development processes. But it can just be coffee when you're starting out, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I actually recently had my first kind of pitch meeting where I was expected to meet with a potential client and kind of, outline what I could do for them and how I could solve their problem. And I've been on my own for almost 2 years, and that's the first time that I did that. So yeah. And it was fun. And even that, which was, more of a formal kind of setting, because it was a bigger business kind of client. It was still just me talking to the person, and going through, it's still that is one of the things I really like about law. And one of the reasons why I didn't leave law when I was kind of evaluating what I wanted to do next was I really like working with people. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Even a giant institutional client, you still have your contact there that, you're serving and, they've got a problem and you're there to help with it. I think that's really fun. And that's the part of law that I enjoy most. So I'm really glad that I've been able to kind of keep doing that and doing that in a different way with my current firm.
Wanted to go back to something that you just said, but now I can't remember what. Oh.
That's okay.
No, you said something that was really good and I totally lost it. But so along the way, you had some kids, you got married, you did all that kind of stuff. How do you kind of prioritize all these different moving parts in your life? I mean, you've been really lucky to be at home, I guess, for a lot of the time that they've been around. And was that kind of intentional or luck that it all worked out that way?
Yeah, well, so I've worked from home, but my kids have been in daycare.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, since they were with my last job, I went back at 10 weeks after they were born. They went into full-time daycare. And then I just had a baby in April.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, she's a doll. And she went into daycare 12 or 13 weeks. Yeah, so I work from home, but my kids are not here. So I think there are seasons of life where different things take priority. And I think it can be hard with law because, a lot of us, the norm is working 50 or 60 hours a week. That's not a hard week. That's a normal week. It certainly was with my last job doing litigation. And so having help and, having a support system, my mom actually moved to Chattanooga. She was living in Memphis and she moved to Chattanooga when I had the twins. And she's a real support. She's not my day-to-day childcare, but she is kind of a backup. When the kid gets sent home from daycare because they've got a fever, she is off. I try and take that when I can because I love those. The sick baby snuggles are kind of the best snuggles.
My babies are both sick this week, and
no!
I know we're supposed to go camping tonight, so we're going to see how that
plays
out.
like you hate to see that number on the phone from daycare because you're like, I know this is never good. But yeah, it just throws a wrench in everything. Like if you've got a filing deadline or something, nobody cares that you have a sick kid. You've just got to get it. You've just got to get it done. So having my mom here has been a huge help for backup and things like that. And then with having my own firm, and now I'm doing more kind of counseling and transactional work, I was able to really plan to be able to take a maternity leave. I did take 6 weeks totally off and hired an assistant before I went out to kind of help me manage emails and make sure that my clients, if they needed something, we could get it figured out, either send them to someone else or if it was something I could handle quickly. She helped me deal with all of that. So being able to, put some systems in place so that I could really enjoy that time with my newborn daughter, and because you don't get that time back.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. And I will say, like, honestly, I love babies, but my boys are a lot more fun now than they were when they were babies. And so I think that was part of it too. They're really fun to be around, and they're hilarious, and they ask crazy questions. And it was easier to be away from them, honestly, when they were babies and they just kind of laid there than it is now when they're more aware that, mommy is working. And having the home office, my husband goes and picks them up in the evenings, and they would come home. And, sometimes I would honestly lock my office door if I had to get something done, and I'd hear them knocking on the door.
Oh.
And, my husband was taking care of them. It wasn't like they were running around unsupervised, but, it tears at your heartstrings a little bit.
Oh, definitely. I work from home as much as I can. And my kids will be 1 and 3 next week. So the 3-year-old's in preschool, he's in Montessori school, and the baby stays home. But so I totally understand the.
Yeah, it's a juggle. I mean, I'm not going to say I have it all figured out, because there are certainly bad days. But if you can kind of find a way that you can, surround yourself with people who can support you, I think there is a way that you can still spend time with your kids and still have a satisfying career if you're intentional about it. I think no one is going to help you do it. You have to kind of figure out what works for you and your family and, manage around that. And that's going to be different for everybody.
Agreed. I think that being intentional about it, but also realizing that there's so many unpredictable things that come with having kids. And I think people, especially lawyers, that's something that's really hard to come to terms with. And you just have to kind of let go of that. And as soon as you do, it's like so much better. Exactly. I don't know. I'm kind of a crazy. I love babies. I could have like 1 million of them. I'm kind of like, it's bad.
Like baby crazy. Yeah.
I have the worst baby fever. At one point I was pregnant, had my 1-year-old on my lap, and was carrying my sister's newborn. And I was like, can we have a baby? My husband's like, what are you talking about? He was like, you're literally covered with babies.
Right. Inside and out.
I was like, I don't know what's going on. But it might have just been the hormones. But I definitely have a little bit of baby fever, but we're working on an antidote. So hopefully I'll recover soon. I think the one thing that you said that I wanted to touch on is that you thought about possibly leaving the law. And if you could just talk a little bit about what that was like and what you were considering and how you kind of crossed that off your list.
Yeah. So I will give a shout out to Danielle Laporte. I worked through.
She's fantastic. I was just.
I had a small group of women right around the time when I decided to leave my job, but I had no idea what was next. A group of women were working through her Desire Map book.
Yep.
And so we all bought it, and we were all working through it together, and we had these weekly phone calls where we would chat about it. And so I really sat down with that book intentionally and was like, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what I want, but I know I need something else. And so anybody who's at a crossroads, I would highly recommend that workbook.
Agreed. Because it's so powerful.
It requires you to do a lot of deep thinking, and it asks really great questions, and it helped me pinpoint what I didn't like about my current job at that point, which I didn't even know. I didn't even know what was making me unhappy and what I did like that I could kind of take into the next thing I did. So I would say that was a huge thing, because honestly, I had been thinking, I'm really involved in the junior league here in Chattanooga, and I've done a lot of communications roles within the junior league. And so I had done a lot of PR, and I had put together a newsletter and a magazine. And so I thought about kind of going back towards that direction, back to my journalism route, but more on the PR side. And so I was kind of, I was exploring that because I really liked that work. And I think through doing the Desire Map workbook and figuring out that there was a lot that I liked about law. I liked working with clients. I liked answering questions. I liked helping people on good days and bad days. I figured out that I could stay with law. It just needed to be a different kind of law than what I had been doing. And I figured out, honestly, at that point, that's what helped me figure out that litigation was not a great fit for me anymore, which I don't think I would have realized on my own. I think I would have just kept doing it.
Yeah, I think that that's true for a lot of lawyers. I think they like to salvage what they can from the wreckage instead of, but it's not necessarily the best pieces.
Yeah, and I think what was partly scary about going out on my own and changing the kind of practice I was doing was all of my expertise is in litigation. Yep. Why would anyone hire me? I'm basically like a baby lawyer out of law school. Yeah. For this transactional work, but that really wasn't true. And I did have a skill set that did translate, from the litigation, even though I'm not writing briefs and, arguing motions anymore, a lot of the basic skills totally translated. So yeah, that was huge in thinking about leaving the law and then realizing that I didn't have to. And I think I also, at that point, I didn't have like a deadline, but I did kind of say to myself, like, let's try this solo practice thing. And if after a year or two, it's not working, like you can do something else. Like this didn't have to be my forever decision. And I think that has helped too. And maybe hopping around a little bit earlier in my career helped with that too. That like, this doesn't have to be forever. There will be another window or a door that may open. And I was actually thinking about this week because I've been working with a coach on as my business is growing and figuring out where I want it to go. And, she was asking me for some longer term goals. And I thought, if you had asked me a year ago, what would my practice look like? I never could have dreamed that it would be what it is today. It's so much better than I had ever expected. And so I'm happy to do some planning and, I love a good list. I love a good set of goals. But, remaining open and flexible that if other opportunities present themselves, it is okay to take a bend in the road and, try something else because it could be way better than what you had actually planned on.
I think that that's so true and is something that I struggled with. And I think a lot of lawyers struggle with who come on this structured, because for so many of us, we started thinking about being a lawyer in like high school. Like not in like a really concrete way, but in a planning activities to go on our resumes.
Yeah. Mock trial, debate team. Yeah,
exactly. And then so to kind of think about life in a way that doesn't feel linear is so challenging.
Yeah, and with so many of us go to big law firms right after law school, and there's a defined path. Like you work your 7 years, and then you're in lockstep, and everybody's making the same money, and you get the same raises, and then you're up for partner, and either you get it or you don't. And
it really does a disservice to our critical thinking skills about our like career trajectory.
Yeah, for sure. And so maybe going with that smaller firm helped me be a little more open to a non-traditional career path. Because I hadn't been in that lockstep for so long where it was like, this is the only way to get to where you want to be. And there's only one option and everybody wants the same thing.
So this is going to be, I kind of want to touch, I have so many things I want to ask you, but I know we need to wrap up soon. So I'd love if you could just touch on, this is another thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, and it's investing in themselves. So talking about your coaching and kind of doing the desire map and doing all these kind of self-development, business development things that do also cost money.
Right.
I find lawyers who've spent 6 figures on law school don't want to spend like $100 an hour on a coach.
Yeah.
And just want to sit in their office and complain.
You should all hire a coma. She's worth every penny.
You should all hire somebody. It depends where you are. I just don't, it's just really hard because I don't know how to get people there to invest in themselves. And what for you was it like, when did it occur to you that you were worth investing in, or was that something that was easy for you?
No, it was hard. I think now I'm at like a year and a half into being a solo lawyer. So, and I just invested in a coach recently. And I think I had to get to the point where I didn't know what to do myself, like where I had done everything I knew how to do. And so getting to that kind of pain point where I was feeling a lot of overwhelm, I was having a lot of anxiety. My days were not looking like I wanted them to look. I'm my own boss. Why do I feel terrible when I sit down in front of my email every day? And I felt like I had all these things that I should be doing that I wasn't doing. And I wasn't even doing the things I needed to be doing. So, having trouble finding time for client work. And that's supposed to be what I'm doing here. And just, I didn't know what the next steps were. So I don't know if you have to reach that. I mean, I wasn't at like a hair on fire point, but I definitely was. I felt like I needed a helper and a supporter. And honestly, and I hired a coach that I knew, she's actually a client. This is very incestuous, but I knew her well from working with her as a client, and I knew she'd be an awesome coach. And she actually, when she gave me her rate, it was a lot more than I had thought it was going to be. But I just had to, and it was while I was still on maternity leave. And so I didn't have any money coming in. And honestly, I just kind of took a breath and I was like, I know this will pay off. Yep. I know that if I make this investment, it will earn a return. And it already has. She's already paid for herself, not just in making me feel better, which she definitely did, but helping me put some things in place in my business that have, because she is a business coach, not just a kind of personal life coach. But yeah, I think for me, at least, it was reaching that point where I didn't know what to do myself. And she also recommended hiring a marketing person, which I had been scared to spend the money on myself. But she was like, she kind of targeted that was what the problem was that I was trying to do everything myself. And I didn't go to business school. I don't know anything about marketing. And so of course I was feeling overwhelmed because I didn't know what to do.
Of course, but it seems obvious now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I think hopefully not everybody has to reach that point of like overwhelm, because I think a lot of it, like if I had hired her 6 months earlier, she could have helped me avoid all of that. And so maybe even just knowing it's out there, like that there are resources that can help you get to where you're going with a lot less pain and drama and suffering.
Amen.
I'm sure, yeah, you help your clients with all of that kind of stuff too, Akoma, like thinking about how to get them where they want to go and taking the pressure off. And so that has been huge for me and has already paid for itself.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you found somebody that I think finding somebody that you like and that you trust is so paramount to the whole relationship. And if you can find that, it really will pay off in spades.
Yeah. And I'm not using a lawyer or coach. Her background is in social work and counseling, but I think because I had worked with her, she kind of understood my business.
Yep.
And I think that is really important, like to find a coach or a supporter, a mentor who gets your business. And a lawyer working with a lawyer coach, I think is so ideal because it is the law firm culture and like just the whole legal industry is so different than a lot of other industries. So working with someone like you who has been in the trenches and really knows your stuff, I think is got to be hugely valuable.
That's so sweet of you to say, but I appreciate it.
Well, I know like having someone who knows my business has been really valuable for me. So I just would imagine it would be the same for others.
Well, thank you so much. I don't know what I could say to top that at this point. I want to thank you so much for coming on today. And could you just let us know if people want to learn more about what you're doing and connect with you? What's the best way for people to learn more about what you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So my next big thing that I'm working on is I'm launching my own podcast on November 14. I'm not sure when this episode will air, but November 14, I'm still working on a name, but you can just look for it with, actually I had a great name and then I'm a trademark attorney. So of course I looked it up and it was already taken.
All right.
So I'm working on version 2, but that is my big project. And it is going to be a podcast for small business owners and creatives, kind of walking them through. I'm going to do a first season that walks them through kind of all of the legal things they need to know and think about in getting themselves set up legally.
Fantastic.
Contracts to LLCs to trademarks, copyrights, all those things. So yeah, that's where people can find me. It'll be on iTunes and Stitcher and all the places. And then my website where people can always find me is awbfirm.com, like Autumn Witt Boyd, awbfirm.com. And there's more about me and my services and lots of free stuff if people are starting their own business.
I think that's
lawyer or not.
Yeah, there's going to be so much value there. As soon as it comes out, we'll add the link to the show notes so that it's easy for people to access. Thank you so much, Autumn Witt Boyd.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for joining me for the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. Please head over to my website, www.thehappylawyerproject.com, for more information from today's show. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave me your thoughts on the show. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or follow me on Instagram. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to head over to iTunes to subscribe and review the show. As you know, each rating helps more listeners find the show and helps me get awesome guests on here for you guys. If there's anyone you'd like me to have on the show, or if you'd like to be on the show, head over to my website and let me know, or send me an email at Akoma, OKEOMA, @thehappylawyerproject.com. A special thanks to everyone who's left a review, sent me an email, or reached out to me in any way. I appreciate you. Thank you again for spending this time with me, and if you would like to learn more about working in your gift and living your passion, head over to the website for a free gift. Until next time, bye!